I wasn't a loner in high school, but I wasn't exactly popular either. I floated somewhere in between, the kind of person who always had someone to sit with at lunch but was never really invited to parties. This story takes place during my freshman year, a time when everything still felt new and overwhelming. New building, new faces, new routines. And back then, you notice new people even more, especially when they show up late in the year. It was March when we got a new student in our school, which was unusual because most transfers showed up at the beginning of the year or at the start of second semester in January. But this kid just appeared one Monday morning out of nowhere. His name was Jace Morris, and no one really knew where he came from. I remember it clearly. I was sitting in Spanish 2, my least favorite class, not because it was hard, but because it always felt like a filler period. The classroom smelled like expo markers and old textbooks, and the fluorescent lights gave everyone a washed-out look. Mrs. Jennings, our teacher, was giving some half-hearted lecture about verb conjugations when the classroom door opened. Everyone turned to look. The assistant principal stepped in, followed by a guy I had never seen before. "This is Jace Morris," she said. "He's transferring from out of district, so make him feel welcome." He looked normal, which in hindsight is what made it worse. Average height, thin, dark eyes. He had one of those haircuts that looked like he'd done it himself in the mirror, short on one side and kind of messy on top. He wasn't smiling, just standing there quietly while Mrs. Jennings pointed to the empty seat next to me. He sat down without saying anything. I didn't either. Not at first. We didn't talk until about a week later. He didn't really interact with anyone else either. I started to wonder if he was mute or just really shy. But then one day at the end of class, while we were waiting for the bell, he turned to me and said, "I'm Jace." It caught me off guard. "Yeah, I remember. I'm Nina." "Do you like this school?" he asked. Simple question. No emotion. "It's fine. Better than middle school." He just nodded. Then the bell rang, and we both got up to leave. After that, it became a thing. Every few days, Jace would say something to me, ask what the homework was or comment on how boring the class was. One time he made a joke about Mrs. Jennings falling asleep while teaching. I laughed and he smiled. That was the first time I saw any kind of expression on his face. We weren't friends. Not really. But he'd started saying hi when he saw me in the hallways, and I'd say hi back. Harmless. Just a quiet guy trying to settle into a new place. One day in April, Spanish class was basically a free period. The juniors had some kind of standardized testing, and the school was on a weird schedule. Mrs. Jennings told us to study silently, which meant most of the class just scrolled through their phones under their desks. Jace leaned over. "Do you live near here?" "Kind of," I said. "About a 10-minute drive." He nodded slowly. "I live off Red Cliff, near the skate park." I knew where that was. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. Maybe a 15-minute walk from the school. "You skate?" I asked. "No," he said, and left it at that. Then he asked me if I liked horror movies. I told him I did, especially the really slow burn ones where you don't know what's going on until it's too late. He just said, "Yeah, those are the best," and smiled again. Looking back now, that smile didn't reach his eyes. It happened 2 weeks later. It was a Thursday night. Late. Around 11:30 p.m. I couldn't sleep. I had this bad habit of staying up on school nights, scrolling through my phone or listening to music with one earbud in. That night, I had just finished brushing my teeth and was about to get into bed when I heard something. It was faint, like movement, but not the normal kind of creaks you hear in a house at night. I paused, turned off my music, listened. Then I heard it again, like someone walking on grass. Our house backed up to a line of trees, and the backyard had no fence. We weren't completely out in the country, but it was quiet. Too quiet. I peeked out of my bedroom window. The porch light was off, but the moon was bright enough to see across most of the yard. At first, I saw nothing, but then someone stepped into view, walking across our front yard, and my heart stopped. It was Jace. He wasn't looking at the house. He was just walking, like he was taking a stroll, wearing a hoodie and jeans. Calm. I ducked back behind the curtain, heart pounding. Why is he here? I never told him where I lived. We weren't friends. I didn't have him on social media. No texts. Nothing. I peeked again. He was gone. I didn't hear anything, but my instincts screamed at me to check the back. I crept down the hall, avoiding the floorboard that squeaked, and went into the living room. The back window gave a wide view of the backyard. I waited. At first, nothing. Then I saw him again. He was walking along the tree line, slowly, looking down like he was following something. Then he stopped. He turned and started walking towards the house. I crouched lower. My heart was racing so hard it hurt. He wasn't just passing by. He wasn't lost. He was coming here. When he got maybe 20 feet from the back porch, he looked up, directly at the window I was hiding behind, and stopped. Even though the lights were off, I knew he saw me. We stared at each other for what felt like forever. Then, just as suddenly, he turned around and ran. I scrambled to the front of the house, heart pounding, trying to catch another glimpse of him. But he was gone. No car, no sound, no movement. I didn't sleep that night. The next day at school, I walked into Spanish class expecting to see him. Maybe ask him, half joking, what the hell he was doing in my yard. But his seat was empty. The day after that, still gone. By the next week, people were saying he had dropped out, transferred again. No one knew where he'd gone. I asked around gently, "Hey, what happened to Jace?" Most people just said, "Who?" He'd only been there a few weeks. No one knew him. No one had any classes with him other than Spanish. It was like he had never really existed. It bugged me for a long time. I couldn't let it go. A couple weeks later, I got bold and asked Mrs. Jennings if she knew what school Jace had transferred from. She looked at me blankly. "Who?" "Jace. Jace Morris. The kid who was in here a few weeks ago." She frowned. "You mean the one who sat near the window?" I nodded. She paused. "I don't think I ever got his transfer file. Maybe the office would know." They didn't. I even asked the assistant principal once under the pretense of doing a school project on student transfers. She couldn't find anything about him. "He's probably in the system under a different name," she said. "These records aren't always updated properly." But I wasn't convinced. It felt like Jace had been erased. I never saw him again, not in school, not around town, nowhere. Years passed. I graduated, moved away, tried to forget about that night. But every now and then, I'd remember it, usually when I couldn't sleep. Sometimes I'd dream about him walking in the yard again. But in the dream, he never stops. He walks right up to the window and just stares in. Or worse, he smiles. I never told my parents about it, never told any of my friends. It felt personal, like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to see. It wasn't until last year, 10 years after it all happened, that I was scrolling through Facebook late at night and stumbled across a post in a local missing persons group. It was someone sharing an old yearbook photo with the caption, "Has anyone seen Jace Morris? Disappeared from Redcliffe Middle School in 8th grade. Never made it to high school. Still missing. Family never got answers." I stared at the photo for a long time. It was him. But the date? He would have gone missing a year before I met him. So how did I know him? How did he show up in my class? And more importantly, who the hell did I see in my backyard that night? I never expected to meet someone like her in a place like that. It was just a regular Tuesday evening. I'd worked late and was tired, half focused on what I needed to buy. The local supermarket, Mason's Market, just a block from my apartment in Brookdale, was quiet, which was unusual for that time of night. Usually there were a few families, maybe a couple students, and a cashier or two chatting among themselves. That night, though, it felt emptier than usual. I actually liked it. Peaceful, no bumping carts or crying kids. I was standing in aisle 7, pasta and canned foods, debating between 2 brands of pesto sauce when I heard someone next to me softly laugh. "You're doing the same thing I am," a voice said, trying to decide which overpriced jar of green mush is the least offensive. I turned and saw her. She had on a light gray hoodie, her dark hair tied up in a loose bun, no makeup, but with that naturally pretty kind of face. Warm. Approachable. She smiled as she held up her own jar. "This one's actually pretty good," she said, nodding toward the one in my hand. "I tried it last week. Didn't hate it." I laughed a little. "Well, that's a glowing review." We talked in that aisle for maybe 5 minutes. Her name was Kara, she said. She had just moved to Brookdale from Chicago a month earlier, starting fresh, new job, new apartment. I didn't even ask much. She volunteered most of it in that way some people do, confidently but casually, like they've told the story a few times already. She mentioned working for a mid-sized marketing firm called Bellevue Digital, said she was getting used to the neighborhood. I told her I'd lived here for 2 years, not that it mattered. We laughed, traded small remarks about the weather, the weird music in the store. Then she waved and said, "Hope I see you again sometime," and went down another aisle. That should have been it. But about 2 weeks later, I saw her again. Different day, different time, late afternoon instead of evening. I was in the frozen section when she literally turned the corner and stopped dead in her tracks. "No way," she said, grinning. "You again?" I smiled too, because it was kind of funny. "You stalking me?" I joked. "Totally," she said, deadpan, then laughed. "No, I swear I've been coming here at weird times. Guess we're just on the same schedule." We talked longer this time. She asked how work was, told me her apartment was just a few blocks away on Cordelia Street. We chatted about random stuff, neighborhood noise, which coffee places weren't totally awful. And when I said I was heading out, she said, "You know, we should grab a coffee sometime or something." I hesitated. I'm not the kind of person who usually becomes friends with people randomly at a grocery store. It just felt odd, but she was friendly, harmless, and she smiled in a way that made you feel like you were being let in on some joke the world didn't know about. "Sure," I said. "Why not?" We exchanged numbers. Over the next few weeks, we met for coffee a few times. Once at a little indie cafe called The Hive, once at the Starbucks near the train station. She was always upbeat, talkative, a little scattered but in an endearing way. She had a lot of opinions on podcasts, makeup, trashy reality shows, and I mostly listened. I'm more introverted by nature, but she carried conversations easily. Eventually, I started to think of her as a friend. Not a deep one yet, but someone I could see that growing into. She didn't overshare in that weird way people sometimes do, but she was open. She talked about an ex-boyfriend back in Chicago, said he was controlling, jealous, and that leaving had been messy. She was proud of herself for moving, for starting over. I respected that. Then, one night, I got a text from her at around 10:15 p.m. "Kara, hey, I know this is weird, but I'm kind of freaking out. My boyfriend came by tonight and things got really bad." I stared at the message. "Boyfriend?" I thought she had left him behind in Chicago. I replied, asking if she was okay. She responded quickly. "Kara, yeah, I'm okay. Nothing physical, but I'm moving out tomorrow morning. I don't feel safe sleeping there tonight, but I'll stay with a friend. Could I crash at your place just during the day, just while I wait for movers and stuff? He has a key and I don't want to be alone there, just for a few hours." I paused. My gut whispered, "Don't." But she had never given me a reason to doubt her. I thought about what I'd want someone to do if I was scared, alone in a new city. I told her yes. She arrived the next morning just after 7:30, right before I left for work. She looked tired but grateful. She brought a large tote bag and thanked me probably 5 times. "You're a lifesaver," she said, walking in. "Seriously, I won't touch anything. I just needed a place to be that wasn't there." I left her with a spare key and told her to just lock up when she left. I didn't think anything of it. I should have, because when I got home that night, everything was wrong. My apartment door was locked. Normal. Nothing seemed off until I walked in and immediately noticed my bookshelf tipped over. At first I thought, earthquake? Then I saw the coffee table had been dragged, cushions ripped from the couch, my laundry hamper dumped out, my jewelry box open and empty. I stood frozen for a full 10 seconds before moving. TV gone. Laptop gone. My iPad, camera, even my headphones were missing. Jewelry, cash, the safe in the closet, open. How? It was small, but I always kept it locked. I texted Kara. Nothing delivered. I called her. Straight to voicemail. That was when my chest got tight and I sat down, trying to stay calm, but everything in me was screaming. I called the police. They came, took a report, and walked through the place. The officer was sympathetic but direct. "Do you know her full name?" I told them what she had given me. First name Kara, last name. I paused. I realized I'd never actually seen it in writing. I dug through our texts, and her contact just said Kara, grocery. She had told me Mara Jennings, now that I thought about it. M-A-R-A. I remember because it sounded almost like Kara, and I'd laughed about that once. The officer looked her up. No one under that name matched in the system with any connection to Brookdale or Chicago. She didn't exist, not under the name she gave me. They pulled the building's security footage. It showed her entering around 7:30 a.m. A man showed up 10 minutes later. Large, hoodie on, head down. They both left around noon carrying bags and boxes. She wasn't alone. She had planned this. She had used me. For weeks I replayed every moment. Her laugh in the grocery store. The way she always seemed just a little too confident. Her questions about where I lived. When I worked. What days I was usually home. Every conversation we'd had, like puzzle pieces, clicked into place in the worst way. The worst part wasn't even the stolen things. It was the betrayal. The fact that I let someone in because I believed they were good, decent, in need, and they were just using me. I changed the locks. I upgraded security. I stayed with my sister for a while because I couldn't sleep. The sound of my own apartment creaking made my stomach twist. The police never found her. The name, the job, even the company she mentioned, Bellevue Digital, didn't exist. She was a phantom. She and whoever that man was, boyfriend, partner, whatever, were gone. Sometimes when I'm walking to the store, I think I see her, a flash of a gray hoodie, a voice that sounds familiar. I freeze. My heart starts pounding, but it's never her. Or maybe it is. And she just keeps walking, blending back into the world like she never existed. If you ever meet someone who seems just a little too perfect at just the right time, trust your instincts, because not every friendly face is a friend. Some are just wearing a mask. I never used to be one of those people who was afraid to walk alone in the city. Growing up in Halton, you learn how to be smart, how to carry your keys between your fingers when walking home at night, how to keep pepper spray handy, how to spot red flags in strangers. But no one really teaches you how to spot danger when it's smiling and pretending to be your friend. Back in late September, I had just started a new job at a design firm downtown. It was demanding and intense, but I loved it. I worked 9 to 5, but I'd started this habit of jogging in the mornings before work to clear my head and stay in shape. Every morning I'd wake up around 5:30 a.m., throw on leggings and a hoodie, and jog from my apartment to Ridgeway Park. A big, open place with sports fields, dense trees in some parts, and winding sidewalks through green lawns. It was always a little foggy in the mornings, especially when the season started to shift into fall. Ridgeway Park was surrounded by streets and small apartment buildings. During the day, it was always bustling with people walking their dogs, playing soccer, or just sitting on benches with coffee. But at 6 a.m., it was quiet, sometimes eerily quiet. I always stuck to the same loop, entered near the north side entrance by the tennis courts, took the path behind the community garden, passed the basketball courts, and looped back around. A little under 3 miles. On work days, I'd be back home by 7, showered and ready by 8. For about 2 weeks, it was my routine. And it felt safe, peaceful even. Like I had carved out a little slice of calm for myself in the chaos of the city. That's when I met Jenna. It was a Wednesday about 6:20 a.m., and I was finishing up my loop. I stopped at one of the benches near the smaller baseball field to catch my breath and respond to a message. That's when she jogged up, slowing down as she spotted me. She was tall, athletic, probably around my age, mid to late 20s, with dark curly hair pulled back and a kind smile. She wore a gray hoodie with navy leggings and wireless earbuds around her neck. "Hey," she said, slightly out of breath. "I always see you out here. You run every morning?" I looked up, a little surprised, but not in a bad way. "Yeah, pretty much. Same time every day." "That's awesome," she said. "It's rare to find people who stick to a routine." "I'm Jenna, by the way." We talked for a few minutes, just casual stuff. She said she lived a few blocks away near the bookstore on Holloway, that she had started running to train for a charity 10K next month. I hadn't noticed her before, but to be fair, I usually ran with headphones in and my hood up. I probably wouldn't have noticed my own mother if she'd passed me on that trail. Before she jogged off, she said, "Hey, if you're ever down to run with someone else, I'd love the company. We could push each other." It was a nice offer. She seemed genuine, friendly, normal. So I said yes. We exchanged numbers and planned to jog together Friday morning. She offered to meet at the same bench, and I agreed. Friday came, and true to her word, she showed up. We jogged the full loop. Conversation flowed easily, nothing forced. She was fun, knew how to joke but also knew when to focus. The kind of person you'd grab brunch with after a workout. I was glad I'd said yes. We jogged together twice the next week too, same time, same loop. Nothing ever felt off. Jenna was consistent, reliable, chill. Then came the following Tuesday. I was at work, staring at a cluttered Photoshop layout when I got a message from her. "Jenna, 5:22 p.m. Hey, random, but I'm gonna hit the trail super early tomorrow, like 4:30. Wanna join? It's when the park's completely empty, kinda peaceful." I hesitated. I'm an early riser, but 4:30? That was a stretch. Still, I liked Jenna. I liked the idea of pushing myself too. And part of me didn't want to say no. I didn't want to seem like a flake. So I agreed. She sent back a thumbs up and said we'd meet at a different spot, near the southern woodsy edge of the park, past the trees behind the old maintenance shed. "It's quieter there," she texted. "Nobody ever runs that loop." Something about that gave me a pause, but I brushed it off. Maybe she just liked more isolated routes. The next morning, I got up at 4 a.m., bleary-eyed and foggy. I pulled on my running clothes and threw on a zip-up hoodie. I clipped my pepper spray to the side of my leggings, something I always did, and put on my running shoes. The streets were dead silent as I made my way to the park. Even the traffic lights seemed frozen in time. I walked past the usual entrances, deeper into the tree-lined side path Jenna had described. When I got to the meeting spot, there was no one there. It was darker here. The streetlights didn't quite reach, and the trees hung low, blocking the moonlight. I glanced around, arms crossed to keep warm. I checked my phone. 4:28 a.m. Maybe she was running late. A few minutes passed. No Jenna. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. At first I smiled, thinking it was her. But when I turned around, it wasn't. It was a man. Tall, broad, wearing all black, hoodie, pants, gloves. His face was completely covered with a thin black mask. Only his eyes were visible. Cold. focused, not shocked to see me. He was coming straight at me. My body went into panic mode. I didn't wait to ask questions. I turned and started walking quickly back toward the path. He sped up. Then he ran, and so did I. I bolted. My lungs weren't even ready. I hadn't stretched, hadn't warmed up. But fear gave me all the adrenaline I needed. I could hear him behind me, closer, fast, too fast. I fumbled for the pepper spray on my hip as I ran, nearly tripping. He was right behind me now. I turned and sprayed, hard, a full blast into his face. He screamed. He lunged anyway, grabbing at my wrist, but the spray had blinded him. He started coughing violently, falling to his knees, clawing at his face. I was coughing too, caught in the crossfire, but I sprinted away. I didn't look back. When I finally reached the street again, I didn't stop running until I was in front of my apartment building. I collapsed onto the stoop, shaking. It wasn't until I was inside and safe that I pulled out my phone. I opened Jenna's messages and paused. I went to text her, but I couldn't. I was blocked. The profile picture, the old texts, they were all still there. But her number was grayed out, and every message bounced back. That's when it hit me. She had set me up. She knew I'd be there. She chose the spot, the time, the isolation. There was no charity run, no quiet trail, just a well-executed plan to lure me out into the dark when no one would be around. I wanted to throw up. I reported the incident to the police later that day. They took a statement, but I could tell they didn't have much hope of finding anyone without cameras or witnesses. I showed them Jenna's texts, her number, the name she used. But they suspected it was fake, a burner, disposable. I never saw her again. After that, I stopped jogging, stopped trusting, stopped assuming that danger wears a scowl or carries a weapon. Sometimes danger wears a smile. Sometimes it laughs with you. And sometimes it asks if you want to go for a run. I was 8 years old when it happened, a time when the world was still mostly magical, when front yards were kingdoms and bicycles were war horses. We just moved into a new house, a beige 2-story on a street called Evergreen Ridge. It was the kind of suburban sprawl where every house looked slightly different but somehow the same. Neatly mowed lawns, mailboxes that leaned just slightly, the distant sound of someone mowing grass always drifting in the background. My parents were always busy. My dad worked construction, long hours with sunburnt arms and mud on his boots, and my mom worked part-time at a dental office and juggled everything else in between. I had an older brother, Daniel, but he was always off with his teenage friends and wanted nothing to do with an 8-year-old shadow. So I spent a lot of time alone or riding my bike up and down the quiet streets, trying to muster the courage to talk to the groups of kids playing basketball or tag in their front yards. But I wasn't good at just walking up to people. I was the shy kind, quiet, the type of kid who needed a little push to make new friends. One Saturday afternoon, my mom came home from checking the mail and said, "I met a lady down the street. Her name's Mrs. Connors. They live over on Willow Court right past the playground. She has a son around your age. His name's Ethan. I told her maybe you two could hang out sometime." I nodded, kind of curious, kind of nervous. She said Ethan's been bored lately too. "I think it'd be good for you, sweetie. You could use a friend." The next day, my mom drove me down the block to the Connors house. It was only 3 or 4 streets away, but back then, even a few streets felt like a different world. Their house was massive. Not mansion level, but definitely bigger than ours. Dark brick, tall windows, a huge front door with one of those fancy knockers shaped like a lion's head. I remember thinking how clean and quiet everything was, like no one really lived there. We rang the doorbell. Mrs. Connors opened it almost immediately, smiling with perfectly lipsticked lips and wearing a sweater even though it was warm outside. "Hi, you must be Ava," she said, leaning down a little to look me in the eye. "Come in, sweetie. Ethan's in his room. He'll be so glad to have company." She ushered us into a pristine foyer, hardwood floors that glowed like they were just polished, a staircase that curved dramatically up to the second floor. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and something else I couldn't quite name, like plastic maybe or old books. My mom didn't stay long. She and Mrs. Connors exchanged a few words I didn't really catch. Then she gave me a quick hug and told me she'd be back in a couple hours. And then she left. Mrs. Connors called up the stairs. "Ethan, come down, honey. Your friend is here." A moment passed, then another. Eventually, a boy came trudging down the stairs. He was taller than me, probably by a lot. He had dark hair, kind of messy, and pale skin that made him look like he didn't go outside much. He didn't say hi, didn't smile, just looked at me for a second and then turned around. "This way," he muttered. I followed him up the stairs and down a long hallway with thick, silent carpet. His bedroom door was closed. He opened it and stepped inside without waiting for me. His room was neat. Really neat. Like, almost unsettlingly neat. His bed was perfectly made, sheets tucked in like at a hotel, shelves lined with toys, all organized by size and type. A desk with a glowing computer screen, a bookshelf sorted by color. "Sit there," Ethan said, pointing to the edge of his bed. I did. I tried to smile at him, tried to break the awkward silence. "So, what do you want to do?" Ethan didn't answer. He walked over to a large black storage box near his dresser and opened it. The lid creaked. Inside was an army of Nerf weapons, blasters, pistols, rifles, even those foam swords. It looked like an arsenal. Without warning, he grabbed a Nerf blaster, loaded it, and shot me in the chest. "Ow!" I flinched. "Dude, what the heck?" He laughed. Not a fun laugh. Not a let's play laugh. It was sharp, dry. He shot again. This time the foam dart hit my cheek. "Stop," I said, holding my hands up. But he didn't. He kept shooting. 3, 4, 5 darts hit me in the face and chest. He only stopped when the clip ran out. My eyes were already welling up, not from the pain but from the embarrassment, from the confusion, from the sheer weirdness of it. "Give me one," I said. If you're gonna play, at least let me have one too." "No way," Ethan snapped, almost laughing again. "You're the enemy." He grabbed a larger gun, like one of those motorized ones with a rotating barrel, and started firing again. The foam darts came fast this time, some of them stinging against my arms and shoulders. I jumped off the bed and tried to dodge, but there wasn't much room to hide. "I said stop," I shouted. He finally stopped, but only to switch weapons. This time it was a Nerf sword, bright blue with a thick foam blade and a plastic core. He came at me like a kid possessed, making swooshing noises with his mouth and hitting me over and over again. Shoulders, legs. Once across the face, I tried to grab it. He yanked it away. "Stop being a baby," he muttered. My voice cracked as I yelled, "Where are your parents?" He didn't answer, just kept whacking. When he finally turned to put the sword away, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit there and wait for the next weapon. I bolted. I ran out of his room, down the hallway, ignoring the soft carpet under my socks and the confusion flooding my chest. I heard him behind me, laughing again. Then a snap and a whiz as something flew past my ear, a foam ball. He'd gotten the slingshot. "Come back," he shouted. "We're not done." I didn't stop. I flew down the stairs, heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. I yanked the front door open and didn't bother to close it behind me. I ran down the front steps across the street and just kept going. My legs burned. My chest felt like it was on fire. I didn't stop until I hit my own driveway. Inside, my mom looked up from the sink, confused. "Ava, what are you doing back?" I could barely talk. "Ethan's crazy. I don't want to go back. Don't make me go back." That's all I really remember saying. I know she called someone afterward, maybe Mrs. Connors, maybe not. I never went back to that house, never saw Ethan again. He didn't go to my school and we avoided Willow Court after that. Sometimes I still wonder about him, about that eerily clean house, about where his parents were that whole time. Maybe they were home, maybe they weren't, or maybe they were watching, letting him play. I don't know what that kid grew up to be, but I do know this. Some people don't want friends. They want targets. I'm older now, 25, and every once in a while, I'll still wake up in a cold sweat, thinking I heard the thud of foam against drywall or the swish of a toy sword slicing the air. It's silly, I know. It was just a kid, just a game. But some games aren't fun. And some kids grow up. Sometimes I wonder if he ever thinks about me, if he even remembers that day. Or maybe for him it was just Saturday, a Saturday like any other. And maybe he's still out there somewhere, smiling that dry little smile, finding someone new to play with, because kids like Ethan, they don't change. They just get better at hiding their weapons. I never used to think twice about the people I shared an elevator with. Working in a massive corporate office in downtown Chicago, I was surrounded by hundreds, maybe thousands, of employees. Our building, a sleek 20-floor glass structure called the Kenslow Tower, housed dozens of different departments under the same parent company, Tessera Global Technologies. I worked in data compliance, tucked on the 14th floor, buried in spreadsheets and email chains, with my small but tight team of maybe 15 people. We all knew each other by name, shared inside jokes, brought each other coffee on bad days. But outside our floor, the rest of the building might as well have been a city of strangers. The lobby was always bustling, polished marble floors, a front desk manned by a single sleepy security guard who mostly waved people through if they had a lanyard. Half the time, I forgot mine in my bag. Nobody really cared. The elevator banks were always full. People in suits, people in jeans, interns, temps, vendors. It was impossible to tell who was who. That's how I met her. It was a Thursday morning. I remember that detail clearly because we had our weekly audit prep meetings on Thursdays, and I had come in early to finish a report I'd procrastinated on. I stepped into the elevator with my usual iced coffee in hand. That morning, there were only two of us riding up. Me and a woman with auburn hair pulled into a loose bun, wearing a long camel coat and holding a paper coffee cup from the building's third-floor cafe, Beanwise. She smiled at me. "Is it always this dead before 8?" I laughed lightly. "Pretty much. Everyone's allergic to mornings around here." She smiled back, eyes warm. "I just started a couple weeks ago. Product design, floor 11. "Oh, cool. I'm on 14 compliance. Welcome to Tessera." We made small talk all the way up. Her name was Mara, she said. She'd moved from New York, missed bagels but not the subway. She had this laid-back tone, like we were already familiar. When the elevator stopped on 11, she waved with her fingers. "Maybe I'll see you around." And I did. The next morning, Mara was coming through the front doors the same time as me. She remembered my name. We grabbed coffee together. Then it was lunch at the food court 2 days later. Then we started running into each other at weirdly convenient times. Always casual, always friendly, never overbearing. And she was interesting. We liked the same podcasts, shared a morbid fascination with true crime, and both loved horror movies. She had a dry, sarcastic humor that matched mine. But something about her always felt slightly off, like her excitement came a beat too late, like she was mirroring rather than responding. Still, I brushed it off. Everyone has their quirks. Over the next few weeks, we weren't best friends, but we were something. Office friends, coffee buddies, elevator acquaintances turned lunch companions. She'd sometimes text me memes. I never questioned how she had my number. I figured I gave it to her and just forgot. It was during our 4th or 5th lunch that I noticed something strange. We were sitting in a quiet corner of Lotus Bowl, a noodle place on the 5th floor. I mentioned a story about my manager giving me grief over a deadline. "She sounds like a nightmare," Mara said without skipping a beat. "That's what, Melissa, right? The one with the glasses?" My stomach tightened. I hadn't told her my manager's name, not even in passing. I laughed it off. "Yeah, she is. Have you worked with her before?" Mara tilted her head. "No, I think you mentioned her last week? I hadn't, I was sure of it. Later that day, I brought it up to my actual friend at work, Janelle, who said something that stuck with me. I don't know anyone named Mara on 11, she said. And I know, like, everyone down there. It bugged me. Enough that the next time I was in the elevator with Mara, I asked casually, "Hey, what team did you say you were on again?" On 11? She blinked as if caught off guard. UX design, she said quickly. With Patrick. There was no Patrick in UX, I knew because I had dated someone in that department 6 months ago. I felt my skin crawl. The moment passed. She smiled again. Why? No reason. But I started paying attention, watching her interactions. I never once saw her swipe into a floor. She always waited for someone else to badge the elevator. Her ID badge, if she even wore it, was often flipped backward. And slowly, she started appearing more often, in the lobby, in the hallway, outside the building. One night, as I left late after finishing a report, I saw her across the street standing near a bus stop, just watching. The next Monday, Janelle came to my desk, whispering like she was about to tell me someone had been fired. "Did you hear about that woman pretending to work here?" My heart jumped. "They caught her Friday," she said. "She'd been coming here for weeks. Security says she had no clearance, no employee record, nothing." I felt ice in my veins. They think she just started showing up every day, eating at the food court, wandering around the building. She made friends with people. One of the front desk guards said he recognized her but just thought she worked for one of the newer departments. My voice was dry. What happened when they questioned her? She ran. The first time. Next time she wouldn't give a name. The cops were called. She's banned from the premises now. My ears were ringing. I said nothing. But inside, everything turned upside down. I never saw Mara again. But for weeks I watched. Every time I stepped into the elevator, every time I walked through the glass doors in the morning, I scanned the crowd. I started locking my social media down, told the front desk to flag anything weird. I stopped eating in the food court. Security added better protocols, mandatory badge scans, sign-ins for guests. Rumors swirled about how she got in. Some said she might have been a failed job applicant. Others thought she was just lonely. Some even said she was mentally unwell. But I knew her. Or at least I thought I did. She wasn't homeless. She wasn't aggressive. She never made me feel threatened. But that made it worse. She pretended to be someone real, someone who worked where I did, shared my interests, mirrored my jokes, knew my life. And I let her in. I kept replaying our conversations, wondering what I had told her. 2 months later, I came home one night to find an envelope slid under my apartment door. No name, no address. Inside was a single photo. Me, sitting in the lobby of my office, holding my coffee, looking at my phone. On the back, in neat cursive handwriting, "You look so tired that day. Hope you're sleeping better now. M." I called the police. Filed a report. Security footage showed nothing. No one suspicious entering my floor. I changed the locks, bought a camera, slept with the lights on. They never found her. I still think about her sometimes. The way she smiled, always a second too late. The way she knew things I hadn't told her. The way she always just appeared. Like a shadow I didn't notice until I was already standing in it. I'm careful now. Guarded. I never trust small talk with strangers. I don't share personal details with new coworkers. I don't take the same route home every night. But sometimes, just sometimes, I still catch myself checking the corner of the lobby or the edge of the cafe crowd. And every now and then I swear I see a flicker of a familiar face, smiling, a little too late. I never thought I'd become close to someone like Eli Carter. In fact, I never planned on it. Back in my first semester at Northridge University, I was just another invisible freshman trying to adjust to dorm life, late-night study sessions, and overpriced coffee. I had a tight group of classmates from orientation, none of us particularly cool, but we got by. clinging to each other like survivors on a raft in the vast ocean of campus chaos. And then came Eli. He transferred in during the second week, something about moving from a college out west. Rumors spread fast, as they do in enclosed environments like college quads and lecture halls. He was tall, striking, with sandy brown hair and light eyes that made you stop mid-sentence. He dressed well, not flashy but precise. His voice was soft, almost reluctant, but when he spoke, people shut up and listened. It wasn't long before I started hearing his name in casual conversations. Eli helped me with my lit paper, or Eli's throwing something this weekend, or even just, "Did you see him in the gym? He's like ripped." I didn't care about popularity, not really, but there was something about him that made you want to understand him. He wasn't trying to be liked. That's what made him dangerous. It wasn't until I ran into him, literally, that I started getting pulled into his orbit. It was raining, the kind of rain that feels personal, cold and sharp like it's accusing you of something. I had my hoodie up, backpack soaked through, trying to get to political science before Professor Laramie did his dramatic door-closing ritual. I turned a corner fast, not expecting someone to be standing there. We collided, books scattered. "Shit, sorry," I muttered, bending down to help. "Don't worry about it," came the reply, calm and measured. I looked up and immediately recognized him. Eli Carter. He gave me a polite smile, almost too polite, like something a flight attendant gives when you're being difficult. Still, he helped me gather my things. "You're, Eli, right?" I asked, trying not to sound as awkward as I felt. He nodded. "That's me." "I'm Josh Bennett." He nodded again. "Nice to meet you, Josh." That should have been it. A brief, awkward encounter. Two strangers crossing paths. But I saw him again that same evening, alone, sitting on a bench outside the dining hall, headphones in, but clearly not listening to anything. He looked off, like something was weighing him down. And for reasons I still don't fully understand, I walked over. "You good?" I asked. He glanced at me, surprised. "Do I not look good?" I laughed nervously. "Honestly? You look like someone who just found out their midterm got canceled and they're not sure whether to celebrate or cry." To my surprise, he chuckled. "Fair enough." That was it. The start. The moment I unknowingly let the wrong person into my life. Over the next few weeks, we started talking more. He wasn't in any of my classes, but we ran into each other enough that it stopped feeling like coincidence. Eventually, I started hanging out in his dorm. It was always eerily clean, like no one actually lived there. No posters, no clutter, not even dirty laundry. Just a desk, a bed with hospital corner sheets, and a small bookshelf full of titles I didn't recognize. He rarely talked about himself. Every time I asked where he was from or why he transferred, he'd give a vague answer, then change the subject. But people were drawn to him, especially girls. He never flirted, at least, not openly. But they hovered around him like moths to a flame. And I'll admit it, I wanted some of that shine. Maybe that's why I kept getting closer. Maybe I thought if I could be more like him, I'd stop feeling like a background character in my own life. But something felt off. At first, it was subtle. A strange chemical smell in his room that he blamed on cleaning supplies. The way his hands always felt slightly sticky after a handshake. The way he never seemed to sweat, no matter how hot the room was. But the worst was the smell. Some days, it was barely noticeable. A faint metallic scent, like old pennies or rust. But other days it was overpowering, like spoiled meat, rotten, but sterile, artificial. I joked once, "You working nights at a fish factory or something?" He didn't laugh. He just looked at me, unblinking, and said, "Something like that." I laughed alone. My friends started noticing too. "Dude, what's up with Eli?" said Marcus one night during a smoke break behind the dorms. "What do you mean?" "He's weird, and he always smells like formaldehyde or something." I don't know, man. Gives me the creeps. I defended him. He's just different. Maybe he's got some kind of skin condition or something. You ever seen him eat? That stopped me. I hadn't. Come to think of it, in all the times we hung out, in the common room, at the park, even during late-night study sessions, I'd never once seen him eat a meal. Sip water, maybe. But food? Never. I brought it up to him one evening, half joking. You ever eat, man? Or are you some kind of plant that survives on vibes? He smiled faintly. Food's overrated. Again, no laughter. Just a long, uncomfortable pause. Then one day he did something I can't forget. I had confronted him directly about the smell. It had lingered on me after we shook hands. I'd scrubbed my arms raw, but it wouldn't go away. What the hell is that smell? I demanded. He walked over slowly, opened a drawer, and took out a small tin. Inside was a pale blue ointment that smelled like mint and bleach. He dipped a finger in and smeared it under my nose before I could pull away. This helps, he said. You'll get used to it. Eventually, you'll start smelling it on yourself too. He laughed, an ugly, sudden laugh, like it wasn't really about the joke. I wiped it off and left, shaken. That night, I couldn't sleep. The smell was in my nostrils, in my clothes, in my sheets. And then he stopped showing up. Eli vanished. No goodbye, no texts. Just gone. I checked his dorm. Locked. His stuff was still there, but no sign of him. Rumors spread fast. Again. This time, darker ones. Someone said they saw cop cars near the admin building. Someone else swore the FBI was involved. And then, the real bombshell dropped. Eli Carter had been arrested. The official story came out in pieces. A missing student had led police to Eli's house, some off-campus rental none of us even knew he had. In the basement, they found a body. Preserved, carefully embalmed, stored in a specially constructed coffin lined with industrial-grade cooling systems. He'd been selling human corpses to buyers on the dark web. Police found evidence of multiple transactions, images, chat logs, a full transaction history. But the bodies were gone, sold, shipped, vanished. And Eli? He'd made thousands, maybe more. Enough that he'd been planning to flee the country, buy land in another name, disappear forever. The scariest part? Weeks before his disappearance, he had invited me to his house, said we should go swimming. It's got a pool, he said. Big one, deep. When I got there, I noticed the pool was strange, huge, industrial looking. The water was dark, and I couldn't see the bottom. I felt sick just standing next to it. He tried to push me in. Joking maybe, maybe not, but I pulled back, laughed it off, left early, and I never went back. When I heard what he'd done, that pool kept coming back to me. The bottomless water, his eyes when he tried to push me in. If I'd fallen, if I'd hit my head, if I hadn't pulled back, I think he would have let me drown. No, I think he wanted me to. It's been years. Most people don't remember him. The college worked hard to bury the story, to protect the image, to deny what happened. But I remember, because sometimes, when I walk past a certain chemical aisle in a store, or when I pass a construction site on a hot day, I smell it. That sour, sterile, decaying smell. And I think of Eli Carter, and I remember what he said. You'll start smelling it on yourself too. Maybe I already do. I was 13 the first time I realized not everyone comes to a party for fun. It happened back in 2011, during that weird stretch of adolescence when you feel too old to be a kid, but too young to be trusted with anything real. I'd been staying with my older cousin Liana in a small, kind of forgotten town in Pennsylvania, Clearidge. It wasn't much, just a long road surrounded by trees and dead air. But Liana lived there and she was cool, so I didn't care. It was early June. School had just let out and one of her neighborhood friends, Ty, was throwing a birthday party. I didn't know him too well, but I'd seen him a few times when I tagged along with Liana to the corner store. He was one of those chill older teens who wore oversized hoodies even in summer and had a house big enough for parties because his parents were never home. Liana convinced me to come, said it'd be fun, and besides, she didn't want to go alone. It was a 4-hour drive from our place in Maryland, and by the time we reached Ty's place, the sun was already giving up on the sky. The woods around his property, thick, piney, and too still, were already casting long, heavy shadows across the yard. His house was the last one on a dead-end road that backed into the forest. Not like suburban woods either. This was real wilderness. Ty's backyard didn't have a fence, it just faded into trees. The party was mostly teens, probably 20 or so people by the time the music got going. There were red cups, snacks on the table, and some guy trying to show off with a vape pen like it was something new. No parents, no rules. It started out fine. I stuck close to Liana at first, sipping soda and nodding along to stories I didn't get, pretending I wasn't completely out of my element. A couple hours in, the music got louder, and people started disappearing into different rooms. Some were hooking up, others were playing video games in the den. I wandered off to find a bathroom. Ty's place was weirdly big, 3 floors, including a half-finished basement, and the halls had that old house smell, a mix of damp wood and history. I finally found a small guest bathroom on the main floor near the back of the house, facing the woods. While I was in there, I heard something, soft at first. A crunch. You ever hear something that doesn't fit even though it's small? Like a wrong note in a song you didn't know you were listening to? That's what it felt like. Crunch. I paused. Figured maybe it was just someone walking around in the backyard. A latecomer maybe, but then it got closer. Crunch. Crunch. Pause. Then something tapped the bathroom window. Just a quick knock-knock. Light, like it wasn't sure if it wanted to be heard. I stood still, waited. Then, bang, I jumped. My heart skidded sideways. I moved toward the window slowly, gripping the sink. The glass was frosted halfway up, but I could still make out a figure through the blur. A man, tall, maybe late 50s, wearing a coat even though it was warm out. His face was close to the glass. Then his hand moved up and knocked again. Louder. Intentional. "Hey," he said, his voice muffled through the window. "Car broke down. You mind helping me out?" My throat closed up. I stepped back. He couldn't see me clearly through the glass, but I answered anyway. I'm just using the bathroom. Someone else will help you." He stood there a second longer, smiling. Then he nodded slowly and disappeared back into the darkness. When I got back to the party, I pulled Liana aside and told her everything. She laughed at first, but Ty, who overheard, didn't. His face went pale, like I'd said a ghost had tapped me on the shoulder. He pulled me and Liana into the kitchen and lowered his voice. "Listen," he said. "I didn't want to freak anyone out, but we've seen that guy before. My mom and little sister said they saw him in the woods last month, then again last week, looking through the basement window." "What?" I whispered. "Did you call the cops?" "We did," he said. 3 times. They came out, walked around, said there was no evidence of trespassing. But he's real. He's been watching us. I just didn't want to ruin the party. Before I could respond, we all froze. Bang, bang, bang. This time, the noise came from the front door. It was violent, demanding. Everyone in the living room stopped talking. One guy dropped his drink. A girl screamed softly and clutched her boyfriend's arm. "Probably the pizza," someone joked weakly. Ty shook his head. "Don't answer it." I moved to the door and looked through the peephole. My stomach dropped. It was him, the same man. Now he was standing inches from the door, licking his cracked lips. His eyes darted around, wide and too bright, like he was excited. His hands were twitching. We didn't move, just stared at each other through the wood and glass. Then came the worst part. The sound of glass breaking from below. The basement window. "Oh my God," Ty whispered. "He's in the house." People started screaming, running. The living room emptied in seconds. I grabbed Liana's hand and ducked behind the couch. Then came the sound that didn't fit. A gunshot. Not loud like in movies. It was more like a firecracker, sharp and terrifying. I heard someone cry out. Then footsteps. Chaos. We stayed hidden, hearts slamming against our ribs. The whole world felt like it was made of rubber, stretching, bending, waiting to snap. Another sound. A struggle. Someone yelling. Then silence. 5 minutes later, the front door burst open and police stormed in. An ambulance arrived. They took away a boy, an older teen who'd tried to fight the man off. He'd been shot in the shoulder but survived. The man had escaped back into the woods. It wasn't over. 3 days later, detectives returned to Ty's house. They told his family they'd found the man. He'd been living in a makeshift shelter about 2 miles into the woods, but that wasn't all. He'd kidnapped 3 children from towns nearby. He kept them in an old storage tank, chained and half-starved. They were alive, but barely. He'd already killed 2 others, dumped them in a creek a few counties over. His trial took place a year later. He was sentenced to death for multiple counts of murder, kidnapping, and assault with a deadly weapon. I didn't sleep well for years after that. Even now, I check every window, every lock. And sometimes, late at night, I hear that soft, curious knock, just in my head. Knock, knock. "Hey, can you help me out?" I never thought someone I trusted more than a brother could be capable of something monstrous. When you're young, friendship feels like an unbreakable bond, forged in late-night snacks, pointless arguments, and secrets you swear to take to the grave. Back in the summer of 2012, I believed that bond was stronger than anything. My name's Ryan Mitchell. I was 22 that year, fresh out of community college and working part-time at a tire shop in a little Georgia town called Mayfield Hollow. It's the kind of place where folks leave their doors unlocked and know their neighbors by name. Nothing bad really happened there. Or at least, that's what we told ourselves. I had 2 best friends, Jason and Mark. Jason Parks was the kind of guy who never shut up. Always had a story, a plan, or a new scheme to make quick money. But you couldn't help but like him. He was magnetic. Girls liked him. Guys wanted to be around him. Mark Reynolds was quieter, steadier. He was the buffer between my sarcasm and Jason's madness. If Jason was a wildfire, Mark was a stream. That summer, we decided to spend a weekend fishing on the Oconee River. Jason borrowed his uncle's old aluminum fishing boat, rickety, loud, and barely held together with duct tape and prayers. We loaded up with beer, gear, and just enough food to last 2 days. We weren't going out there for fish. We just wanted to breathe, to escape. The river snaked deep into the woods, wide in some places, narrow and fast in others. The further we went, the more the trees seemed to lean in like they were eavesdropping. It was beautiful, but something about it always felt forgotten. "Y'all ever wonder what's under this water?" Jason asked, standing at the tiller, steering like he'd done this all his life. "Fish, rocks, probably your common sense," I joked. Mark chuckled and wiped sweat off his brow. "You joke, but this place gives me the creeps. My dad said a guy drowned out here a few years back. They never found the body." Jason grinned. "Probably gator food by now. Or worse. You don't want to smell alligator breath, boys." It was stupid. Just a joke. But that line would haunt me later. We'd been out on the water maybe 3 hours when it happened. The sun was starting to dip. The water shimmered orange and gold, and we hadn't caught a damn thing. Jason started driving the boat more aggressively, spinning it in small circles like he was trying to stir up the fish or our stomachs. "Cut it out, man," I said. "You're gonna tip us." "Relax," Jason said with that annoying grin, just giving the catfish a show. Then it happened. Suddenly and stupidly, Mark lost his balance and toppled over the side. The splash was massive. For a second, it didn't register. Then we heard him screaming, "I can't swim!" Jason froze, but only for a heartbeat. Then he cranked the motor and spun the boat around, but he was going too fast. I shouted, "SLOWDOWN!" Too late. The edge of the boat slammed into Mark's head with a sickening crack. His body jerked and the screaming stopped. Just like that. I stood up, panicked. "Mark!" Jason cut the engine and jumped into the water. He disappeared under the surface. Seconds passed. Then more. I scanned the water, heart pounding. Jason popped up, gasping. "He's not here. He sank, damn it. It's too deep." I was in shock, cold, frozen. I didn't even realize I had dropped to my knees in the boat. Mark was gone. Jason climbed back on board, dripping wet, breathing hard. I couldn't find him. We waited. We stared at the water as if he might just pop back up, laughing. But the river had gone still, like it swallowed the moment whole. I called 911. They sent a rescue team, divers, a helicopter even. But the river was fast and deep and murky. They didn't find his body until 3 days later, miles downstream. Closed casket. Jason told the police it was an accident, and they believed him. Mostly. There was no proof of intent, no history of violence. But someone must have pushed for justice because he got 2 years for negligent homicide. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Was it really just a tragic accident or something worse? I kept replaying it. The spin of the boat, the way Jason's face had looked, not panicked, not even guilty, just flat. Something in my gut told me he did it on purpose, but we were friends, weren't we? After the sentencing, I cut all contact. I had to. Every time I looked at him, I saw Mark sinking into the darkness. 2 years later, I got a call. It was Jason. "Ryan," he said, like nothing had happened. "I'm back. Want to go crocodile fishing?" I almost dropped the phone. Crocodiles? In Georgia? It was a joke. His sick kind of joke. I said no. Hung up. But curiosity is a hell of a thing. Weeks later, I found myself meeting him for a drink. Then again, and again. Each time he chose the location, always remote. Backwoods roads, dried up creeks, abandoned hunting cabins. And he kept saying the weirdest things. "Hey, you ever think about how easy it'd be to disappear someone out here?" Or, "If you scream out here, who's gonna hear you?" I laughed the first few times. But it started wearing thin. One night, deep in the woods, behind a decommissioned campground, Jason stood staring at the water. "I've been thinking," he said, eyes shining. "What if we built a pit up in the mountains? Deep. Fill it with water. Drop in 100 piranhas, just to see what happens when you toss in a live body." He was dead serious, grinning like a kid on Christmas. I told him to get help, but he just shrugged. Then came the worst one. He told me about a business idea. "If you want to make real money," he said, "you film a human meat mukbang. Post it on the deep web. Charge crypto for access. We'd be millionaires." That was it. I knew then. I had to get away from him. I blocked his number, deleted him off social media, stopped answering calls from unknown numbers, moved to a different city. I was done. Or so I thought. 10 years passed. I built a new life, new job, new friends, even started dating again. I never spoke about Jason. Not to anyone. Then one Thursday morning I got a call. Unknown number, Atlanta area code. I hesitated, then answered. "Ryan," the voice croaked. "It's me. Jason, I've got cancer, man. I'm dying. Got maybe a few weeks. I just wanted to see you one last time, say goodbye." My stomach sank. I should have said no. I should have hung up. But part of me, the part that remembered our teenage years, the laughter, the loyalty before it all went dark, felt something. Pity, maybe. So I went. He was in the Emory Hospice Center, emaciated and pale, skin like wax paper, sunken eyes, tubes everywhere. But when he saw me, he smiled. "My friend," he whispered. "We had so much fun, didn't we?" I sat down, unsure why I'd come. Then he said it. "I don't know if you ever knew, but I killed Mark on purpose." My blood went cold. "What?" I said, my voice barely audible. "I'd missed a huge fish because of him," Jason said, voice calm. "He kept messing with the anchor. I lost it. I just wanted to scare him. But then when he fell in, I saw a chance. I knew what I was doing." He coughed, then smiled again. "He's not the only one. I've killed 5 people total. You thought those stories I told you were jokes? Nah, all real." I stood up. My hands were shaking. "Jason, why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm dying. But I've got one last wish." I didn't answer, just stared. "Get me a knife from the surgery room. I want to gut the surgeon who opened my stomach. I want to see how he looks with his guts hanging out." I backed away. "I'm not doing that." He chuckled, eyes wild now. "Ah well, can't blame me for trying." I walked out and never looked back. A week later he died. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't send flowers. Sometimes I lie awake at night wondering, did he really kill 5 people? Were those stories just tall tales, or was I friends with a serial killer? And Mark? I think about him often, his laughter, his kindness, and how his life ended in a cold, silent river. Jason may be gone now, but what he left behind, those memories, those doubts, that terror, still clings to me like river mud. Sometimes when I drive past the Oconee, I swear I see ripples, even on windless days. Maybe it's just the current, or maybe Mark still wants someone to know the truth.